My name is Jean-Michel Blottière. I am the president of Games for Change Europe, Games for Change being a non-for-profit organization based in France, and which is the little sister organization of Games for Change worldwide, which is based in New York. I believe games are a medium like movies, like television, like books, like newspapers, and all of these media are, most of them, used for entertainment. A lot of movies are for entertainment. You just go and see Guardians of the Galaxy 2 and you spend a very lovely moment, full of excitement, full of beautiful images. But it doesn't change you, it doesn't have any impact on the rest of the world. When you go and see a documentary about children soldiers, then you are probably moved, you learn something, and you are not the same when you leave the movie theater. For the games, we believe it's the same thing. Most of the games are pure entertainment. You spend a lovely moment and you enjoy yourself very much, but you don't necessarily learn anything, or it doesn't necessarily change you or move you. But there are a few games which are achieving this goal, games which are full of emotion, like Heavy Rain, for example, or games which will make you conscious of something that you might not have been aware of.
Nice to meet you. I'm Francesco Cavallari. I've been working 15 years in the games industry. I joined Ubisoft in 1999 and I stayed there for 15 years. I started as a programmer, then I became producer, and at the end I was production director of the Barcelona studio until 2014, almost 3 years ago, when I decided to switch. I mean, making better game or more successful game was not enough anymore for me. So I decided to switch, and I founded an NGO that is called the Video Game Without Borders. So now I dedicate all my time to this NGO where we are trying to use games for good. So Video Game Without Borders is a non-profit organization, and it's also a global community.
Hello, my name is Maximilian Krauß and I'm working at the Stuttgart Media University. I am currently working on a serious game, surprise, which is supposed to teach employees of a big company, we have a partner for this, on how data security is influenced by their own behavior, like what they can do, what they shouldn't do, what they might be doing. And essentially we're trying to provide a good method to tell people, okay, this is what you have to keep in mind when you're working. This is what you shouldn't do. These are mistakes that you don't see if you don't know if you're not trained in security questions. Security itself has a tendency to be not the most entertaining thing in the world. And on top of that, we're working with a Swiss bank, so we're a bit limited in the freedom that we have. We can't do too much crazy stuff because they try to be somewhat serious, and they have to take a look on their reputation, of course. So if the game ever gets to the public, it needs to fit. So, but actually, the idea of social engineering, which is part of the security process, was quite fun to learn, because I mean the very first thing we had to learn was how do you hack a bank, essentially, and then how do we teach that to people, or to be more precise, how do we teach people to prevent hacking? That's actually what we do.
Okay, I'm Emmanuel Guardiola. I'm professor, doctor at the Cologne Game Lab. It's an institute of the Applied Science University of Cologne. And I'm a former game designer from the industry. I worked 15 years in different studios and major publisher as Ubisoft, and contribute to roughly 30 titles.
Well, first, I'm coming from the game world. I started the very first magazine dedicated to video games in Europe in 1982, then the first TV show about games, and I was very curious about this new medium.
I mean, I have to be honest, it's not been my passion through all my life. I mean, I was a young kid and I like entertainment game, like commercial games, and I've been playing them. But when I started working in the industry year after year, I just changed a bit. Like I'm no more a gamer, and I just tend to see, think how can I help with my set of skills, with my experience, with my network of contacts, and that's what it ended up. I mean, it just happened.
When I was a student, I was thinking, wow, there's this new medium. Why don't we create the equivalent of Les Cahiers du Cinéma, a magazine which would look at games as a cultural phenomenon, not just as an entertainment thing. And it worked extremely well. It was extremely successful. And then I did TV shows on other magazines, other TV shows, even a TV channel. And then at some point, the whole world of game changed. And François Truffaut, to name a movie maker, was explaining that it took 30 years, it took a whole generation for the movies to leave the fair world. When the movie were created, the invention of cinema, it was exactly like VR today. It was this wow effect. You know, people would go and they would see a train coming out of the screen, and that would be wow, super impressive, and you have to see it. What, you didn't see it? Wow, you're such a loser, you have to see. Exactly the same thing as VR as of today. When it took a whole generation, which makes sense. I mean, the movie industry had to wait for directors to be born after the invention of cinema to start creating movies which were compelling, more significant. And the game industry followed this pattern extremely well. If you consider that Pong is the first video game, and you know that Pong was created in 1972, 30 years later we saw schools, the creation of schools like Engmin, the National School for Video Game Design, and other schools in Europe. We saw a magazine which started to really be very interested in games as a medium, and starting to not only to market the games and just to say, wow, there's new games which is better than the one that you saw last month on it, but it's not as good as the one which will appear next month. It was suddenly people who were trying to meet with game designers, with writers, with storytellers, with programmers and so on. So we saw this whole movement, and we saw a group of students and researchers and also game designers who were a little bit tired of doing the same games again and again and again, who started to say, okay, what can we do with this thing? So we saw games like Darfur is Dying, on the genocide in Darfur by my dear friend Susana Ruiz. We saw people like Suzanne Segerman, who understood that there was something and who created Games for Change with a group of other researchers and academics and game designers. Very interesting, very fascinating phenomenon.
I mean, making games nowadays is much easier than I was younger, because there are so many tools, there's so many information in the internet. So if you really want to, you get all the information up there. Take it and do it. There are even tools where you can make games without programming one single line of code. And so it depends on what are your skills. I mean, in my case, I was really bad as an artist. I was even worse as an audio and music. So in the end, I ended up being a programmer. If you are a good artist, then study art. I mean, studying is important because it gives you a set of basis for everything you will do after. Then you need to practice a lot. And nowadays there's an old indie scene where you can gain a lot of experience, ship little games, do game jams, participate to all these time activities, because it's where you meet people that will inspire you, and it will just bring out ideas, build teams, and just grow little by little.
So the term serious game, in my opinion, is just something that was created to talk to business people so they understand what you're doing. But I think that there should be no difference between a serious game and a normal commercial entertainment game to the player. When you're playing, it's a game, and that's what it should feel like, nothing else.
My approach to make serious game is to use the propriety of games. Games have the ability to engage people. Okay, and what are the mechanisms that are doing so? The games are able to train visual attention of people. The games they have many characteristics and properties that we can use, reuse for other purpose. So I'm not doing things like, your mission is to reach this real life objective, then let's figure out how we can do something for that using something that looks like a game. That's not at all the way we do it. It's really the other way. So we have games that are able to do that. Is this thing can reach someone? There is an interesting example coming from one of our previous research projects. It was a game for people for Alzheimer patients. In fact, originally, we just had this paper from two researchers saying that people who are playing first-person shooter train their visual attention. And say, okay, maybe there is a population of people who need to train their visual attention, but don't have games for that, because these games are mostly addressed to people who are healthy and etc. So we designed a game for these particular people. So it was a kind of a shooter where you have to take photos for older people, disabled older people, and that was an interesting way to use characteristic of an entertainment game to reach a serious purpose. So I think that's the angle. So, talking about Dark Souls, the game, and say that how Dark Souls helped them to overcome some kind of depressive episode, or you have a game like Zelda who helped some dyslexic children to read, or a teacher who use mode of civilization in classroom. So yes, a entertainment game can be used in a serious purpose. There is not such a frontier. I think the frontier we can have is there is some game who work, and some who don't, and you have good and bad game. That's something we can eventually evaluate. But the frontier between where a game is impacting in real life or in ordinary life, it's blurring with time. We know that even when you are playing Candy Crush, you are training something, some cognitive abilities. So where is the limit of the serious game?
The game community is a very interesting community, because it's a community where you can learn, you can go to school and learn how to make games, but you can also make your own games without going to school and still create amazing games. So in a way you could say that you don't need to study to become a good game designer or get a good game creator. And I believe that we should really encourage everybody to play games and to try to understand how these games are made, what makes them compelling, what makes them interesting, and start to understand, start to write stories, start to maybe learn how to program, create worlds, create this games mechanic, which will make the game really fun. Start drawing, learn how to draw with 3D tools. You can start drawing swords, and you can start drawing helmets and equipment, cars, strange vehicles, and learning by doing is still extremely possible. The video game industry, the video game world is full of people who didn't go follow traditional schools. It doesn't mean that they didn't learn, they didn't study, they read, they went to movies, they watched TV, they watched TV series, they played a lot of games, and they accumulated a whole culture of these media, and then they can retranscript this. And so I would say that, yeah, it's important to dare and not to be afraid. And even if you are a geek, and even if a lot of adults or so-called adults are telling you that you are stupid, that you are inept, that you are an imbecile, it's impossible for you to learn anything, well, in a way it's their problem. It can be yours as well, but it's their problem. It's the way they see you, and you know deeply that you are not like that, and it's just that they don't understand. Because the problem that the video game industry is facing is that a lot of people do not play games, and when you don't play games, you cannot understand. You cannot have you cannot have the right understanding or the right opinion on games. You still have these people. The problem is that these people still have an opinion. They still believe that games are stupid, that games are only violent, that games are. They don't understand that. For example, in this big competition and these leagues and which are competing worldwide, the people who are at the top level, they master. They are at the same time a chess champion, a Go champion, a ping pong champion, strategy champion, and they master different facets of talent which are absolutely amazing. And it makes sense to have these movies where you have these game people who are saving the world, because it's true that they have an amazing control of many different levels. So yes, make games, don't be afraid, jump into the pond, and don't be afraid in general. This is something that I try really to repeat to myself, to others, to everybody. It's just let's try not to be afraid all the time.
When you're designing a game, the biggest mistake would be assuming that you know what you have to do to make it fun. Don't plan ahead too much, just try it out. If you have one simple idea, do it, see if it works, and if it doesn't work, then cut it out. Even if you think it's such a great idea, if it's not fun, then you shouldn't keep it in the game. What I see a lot in serious games is that they are only focusing on sending their message to the player, which gives the player the feeling of being smashed into the face again and again with the message. And this is not a very pleasant experience. So my approach is, instead of just making a game that is only sending a message, use your message as part of the game design process and use it as the foundation, like your key vision statement. Whenever you do your game and you ask yourself, okay, is this what we want to do, where we want to go, then you should have your key statement and go back to this very sentence, because this is the core of your game. And if you stick to this, then it's going to feel natural, and your message is always going to be in the game because it's been there from the very beginning.
According to me, the mistake I've seen many times is trying to make the game for yourself instead for your audience, because we all like our own ideas, but our own ideas are maybe thought because of us, what we like, instead of asking the real client, the real player, what is really what they want, what is really what they think about it. And then the other thing, maybe sometimes we ask, but we are not really open to listen. So the best thing is be open to listen to feedback and iterate on your ideas.
I will point one particular mistake. It's to be fascinated by systems. I mean, we can be very proud of what we are designing. I mean, when we are designing system, we can be very proud of this system, say, wow, look how it works, how it's balanced, how it's fantastic. And doing so, we forget gameplay and the player involvement. And so I think it's one of the big traps we can fall in. I used to fall in, and sometimes even in production right now, I fall into that, say, oh, look at this, it's so beautiful, this little mechanism and things. And in fact, this is not the game. The game is when people are the end on it, and so you should sometimes step back and look again at the game being played. So be aware of the system.
If you're hesitating, I can only give you the advice that I get every time when I ask professionals from the industry what I should do. And the sentence you will hear again and again is fail and iterate, which essentially means try it, fail, look at your mistakes, and then improve. Don't try to do it right on the first try, because that's not going to work out. It never does. So if you're unsafe or don't feel sure, try out little things, give that to people, say, hey, what do you think? And it might be very hard feedback, but this is how you learn eventually. So don't be afraid of making mistakes. This is my advice.
So be prepared to preach. That's you will have to convince people that games can make a difference. We believe it, but
We believe in games. That's our motto.
So don't be afraid, be brave, do what you have to do, be who you are, and that's what matters. And the game industry allows this. I mean, these new communities, they really allow you to be dressed the way you want, to wear the shoes you want, to wear the, to be fat, to be small, to be tall, to be whatever, be who you are, it doesn't matter, make good games.
Join our community. I mean, Video Game Without Borders is an open community. Just go online, fill the form like Yasi did, and we'll be part of the community and we'll make a better world together. Cheers.